Welcome to the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. We're taking a look at the Week 7 waiver wire targets, and Dave, we're actually halfway through the fantasy regular season. It hit me this week. It's like, wow, we're halfway there to the fantasy football playoffs. This is when everyone's roster is really starting to take shape, and each week we really have to pay attention to who's on the waiver wire, even when it doesn't look good, because these are the players that maybe we say, he's a backup running back, or that's a wide receiver 3. But then those are the guys that in week 10, week 13, and in the fantasy playoffs, all of a sudden we're having to rely on them. We're at a weird point in fantasy football where we are relying on players we did not expect to.
And it happens quickly. Like, how fast did Tyrone Tracy go from maybe he can rip off a big play here and there if Devin Singletary has to miss, to wow, Tyrone Tracy is one of the best running backs in the league. And even when Singletary comes back, he might still have some standalone value. So things change quick in the NFL. And some of these guys that we're talking about now might seem like short-term band-aids or stashes until opportunity changes, but could quickly become, a league-winning upside with any of these guys.
So that's your cue. If you're watching or listening to this, don't click away. This episode is going to be important. We're going to be talking about multiple targets that you can pick up off of the waiver wire, even including guys that are 98% available in fantasy leagues. So if you're watching here on YouTube, please give this video a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, comment down below with your waiver wire questions, and we will get back to you. As always, we're going to do this in a waiver wire draft format. Dave, as always, you get the first pick, and in round 1, these are players that are available in at least 50% of sleeper leagues. So take us away.
Yeah, I'll take the cream off the top. This is a pretty easy one here. Xavier Legette is still available in over 50% of leagues, and he has had touchdowns in back-to-back games that he has played and finished with Andy Dalton. In week 5, we saw him leave with a shoulder injury, but he is the very clear wide receiver 2 on this Panthers team. Now, the shine is starting to wear off a little bit with Andy Dalton. He doesn't look quite as good now as he did in his first start, but still, throwing for a lot of yards, maintaining good passing production in this offense. We know Deontay Johnson is going to get his, but there's going to be enough going around that Xavier Legette makes for a high-end wide receiver 3 in most matchups. And if he can continue to develop, we have to remember this is a rookie, and rookies do get better as the season goes on. We could see that upside grow even more. This is a first-round pick with off the charts athleticism. They're going to continue getting him the ball. And what we've seen is a lot of targets specifically near the end zone where he can score fantasy points. So not a guy that I'm going to, say you have to fit into every single lineup every single week going forward, but absolutely worth a pickup if he's available now. He's going to help get you through bye weeks and injuries and all of that over the next month or so. And then if he continues to develop, he could be a guy that you're, starting without even thinking twice down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs.
Any player that owns and rides his own horse has my
Dollar
respect.
bill. And he did it again.
He did the dollar bill again?
He did. After he scored, he did the dollar bill again.
No, -1. Let's get more creative. Let's start. That can't be his patented thing, riding a horse. People have been doing that forever.
To be fair, he did say that if he scored again, he was going to ride dollar bill again, and he stuck to it. I mean, he was off to a start. He got injured so early in week 5, but same thing. They were feeding him the ball early in week 5. He just left super early with an injury and wasn't able to make it in. But the very clear wide receiver 2 on a team that is going to be in a lot of game scripts where they're going to be playing from behind and having to air it out. So really like the upside for Legette, and just a fun player, a fun person. Went to the same college as Debo. His play style mimics him a little bit. We get really lost in the discussion of finding the next Debo. There might never be a next Debo, but Xavier Legette, pretty darn close.
It's simultaneously the best and worst piece of content that every single football person does every year. The next Cooper Kupp, the next Puka Nacua, the next Debo. It's both at the same time. It's awful and fabulous. Dave, I'm going to go with my first pick here. And I was surprised to see that this player was this readily available, but Christian Watson, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, is available in 58% of leagues, the exact same percentage as Xavier Legette. And he got dropped in a lot more leagues than I expected. And this is a guy, like I talked about him prior to the season. He's always a big play threat. We know that he's got the talent. We know that he's always a threat to score. And we know that he has developed a good relationship with Jordan Love on the field. This past week, led the team in receiving yards. Jordan Love right now, second in the league in passing yards per game. If you go and you look at the total passing yards, obviously it's not quite the same because he did miss a few weeks there, but the Packers offense is humming. Jordan Love looks really good. And now I mean, honestly, I'll take any Packers wide receiver at this point if they're available on the waiver wire. The Packers have the third easiest remaining strength of schedule for wide receivers in fantasy football. Now we get the news right before the show that Dontavian Wicks is going to be week to week with a shoulder injury. Yeah, I'll grab any Packers wide receiver that's out there right now. Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs. Even if Dontavian Wicks is out there, even with the injury, if I have a deep bench, I'll stash him there as well. Bo Melton, there you go, Dave. I said it. I said his name. Any of these
Coming
players,
to
man.
life.
I want pieces of the Packers offense.
Yeah, and I think that Jordan Love is like the perfect quarterback we want to see in fantasy. I don't know, man. He's a polarizing guy, and I understand why. Like you look when he gets under pressure, he just completely melts down. But it's really nice for fantasy when you have a quarterback that's willing to just like close his eyes and on a fadeaway, just chuck a ball 60 yards downfield and let his wide receiver make a play. And Jordan Love does that a lot, and it works for him, and it turns into some interceptions here and there. But what we're concerned about, fantasy, can he support these wide receivers? Because we know there are a lot of pieces in this Green Bay passing attack, and Jordan Love absolutely can support all of them.
All right, let's go to round two. You and I are going to be picking players that are available in at least 60% of sleeper leagues. So this is going to start to appeal to a wider audience. Dave, kick us off with your first pick.
I still can't believe that Tyler Algier is available in any leagues, let alone 60% of them. Talked about Tyler Algier last week. If he's still available in more than 50% of the leagues, I'm going to talk about him again next week. Like, I don't know what we're doing here. He should be rostered in every single league. Even if he wasn't getting the weekly work that he is an extremely valuable handcuff running back if something were to happen to Bijan Robinson. But regardless of something happening to Bijan Robinson, there's standalone value here. Like last week, they both had 19 opportunities, split exactly down the middle. You look at almost every single week so far this season, and it's been near a 50-50 split with Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. Now, Bijan Robinson obviously has the big play upside. He's a little bit more involved as a pass catcher, but the Falcons are a good offense. We had some speed bumps early in the season, but they are clicking now, and they like to lean on the run. We got flex value here for Tyler Algier with the standalone player. And if something were to happen to Bijan Robinson, God forbid, then we're looking at huge upside here. I mean, these players are so rare. We talk about them all the time, and they very rarely actually exist. The guy with standalone value and elite contingent upside, it's exactly what Tyler Algier has, and he's still available in over 60% of his leagues. I don't understand. I do not understand why he's available.
Any player, any running back like this that has that handcuff ability, or like you said, even just the standalone ability without an injury to Bijan, they should not be in the waiver wire. So the fact that he's available in this many leagues is just, it's mind boggling. I do think that a lot of it is just still the stink of Arthur Smith. And I think there are a lot of people that still look at the Falcons in the same way that they always have. It's just, you never know who you can rely on. And right now, it really seems like the only player you can rely on in that offense is Drake London, which I still think a lot of people are still very worried about that he's going to turn into a pumpkin at any point now. So I guess that's where a lot of it is, but I don't get why Tyler Algier is still this readily available.
It's a good running back. Like we got to remember, this guy went for 1,000 yards as a rookie. The complementary skill sets that we hear about all the time could not be more apparent than they are in this Falcons backfield. You've got Bijan Robinson, who has elite burst, can make people miss out in space, great hands, big playability, and then you've got Tyler Algier, who's just this old school mauler, and he is just going to hit a pile and drag that pile for 5 yards. He's not going to make people miss. He's not going to shake anyone out of their cleats, but he is just going to pound between the tackles. And every offense needs that, and they've got that with Tyler Algier, and they can line him up in the backfield and then put Tyler or Bijan Robinson out wide. There's so much versatility with Bijan Robinson, but Tyler Algier is that old school running back that really keeps this offense marching down the field. Just crazy to me that he is so under rostered right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons offense looks good. It's surprisingly good, actually. I think this is what everyone was hoping for with the changes in coaching and the changes at quarterback. So, yeah, just like the Packers, I'm rostering any piece of the Falcons offense I can right now. I'll give you my pick, and this is a really good offense. And it just seems like it does not matter what we do or who gets taken away from this offense, but Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, all they do is win games, they score touchdowns, and they actually just keep making more and more fantasy producers. It's nuts. And I'm going to go with Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's still available in 67% of leagues. This last week, over a 20% target share in the Rashee Rice role, which he was Rashee Rice before Rashee Rice. Like they had Juju. and they drafted Rashee Rice, and he took over that role. And now Rashee's hurt, and then here comes Juju back, and it's just snip, snap, snip, snap. But last time that Juju was in this role, he nearly went for 1,000 yards. He finished as the wide receiver 27 in fantasy. This was a player who was not just like decent, but actually quite productive for fantasy football. And I don't know that he'll necessarily reach that again, but for me, I continue just to go back to this, get players that are getting targets in good offenses, and I will trust Patrick Mahomes with anyone except for maybe Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But I will trust Juju Smith-Schuster in this offense. I know a lot of people are saying I want to see it more than just one game, but Mahomes is already out here in interviews saying, I'm glad Juju showed that he's still got it. I'm glad he's on our football team. And we know this is the type of receiver and the type of routes that he really likes to target. He can get a lot of that underneath stuff while Travis Kelce is demanding more of the attention downfield. And even when Marquise Brown gets back on the field and with
I don't
Xavier
think it will
Worthy
be
out
this
there,
year. I don't think
you
we're
don't think
seeing
it's going to be this year?
Marquise Brown. I think his season's done.
Oh,
They haven't officially announced it yet, but it sure seems that. It sounds like what I've heard from insiders is like the best case scenario is that maybe he's back for the playoffs.
then yeah. Then yeah, like this pick to me becomes even that much more valuable in waivers. This was me even thinking that Marquise Hollywood Brown would return. If he's not coming back, then yeah, this team is Juju and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelsey. And that's it. Like there's no one else stepping through that door. I think there was a little bit of the worry that maybe the Chiefs would trade for Devontae Adams. Dude, there's no shot that the
Yeah.
Raiders are trading Adams within division like that. So yeah, I'm going with Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy that can be a top 2 or 3 target earner on a Chiefs offense is just way too valuable for fantasy to still be out there on the waiver wire.
Now, we talked about Juju on Tuesday's show because we do our waiver show on Monday, which always gives us the benefit of getting our content out early so people can listen to it, but the disadvantage of missing out on Monday night games. And we talked about Kareem Hunt leading into that week, but we didn't talk about Juju Smith Schuster, but we did talk about him on Tuesday's show after Monday Night Football when we were doing our rest of season tight end rankings. And I said, we need to talk about Juju Smith Schuster because he went for over 100 yards in that game. And the more I dug into it, I think last week would have been a great week to pick him up because he went overlooked because they were on bye in week 6 and people don't like picking up guys who are heading into their bye week. But man, the more I looked into it, weeks 1 through 9, Juju Smith was a full-time player, and then he got knocked out of week 10's game with a concussion. When he came back, he was limited for the next few weeks, and then he had some late season injuries that limited his play as well. But when he was healthy to start the year, week 1 through 9, we're looking at over half a season of data here in 2020. 9 games, and his per 17 game average, if we extrapolate that over a full season, 128 targets, 94 yards, 1,200, or I'm sorry, 94 receptions, 1,237 yards. That's almost identical to what we were expecting and projecting for Rashee Rice. So you
Right.
talked about it, Alfredo. We can get into the specifics of the system and how it works and all that, but this is
Minutia.
literally a one-to-one replacement. Juju is doing exactly what Rashee Rice was doing, running these short crosses about across the middle of the field, picking up yards after the catch. We're not going to see Juju running deep downfield. We might have some new listeners that have just tuned in over the last couple of weeks, but anybody who listened in the offseason heard us talk about how Andy Reid deploys his wide receivers. It is very delineated in what his wide receivers do. You're either running deep downfield or you're running short crossers. And Justin Watson is the guy that's stretching the field. Juju Smith Schuster is the guy that's running those short crossers, just like Rashee Rice was. It's not crazy to think that Juju Smith Schuster, if he stays healthy, can give you like 90 to 95% of the production that we were getting from Rashee Rice, which that alone would be low end wide receiver 1 value. So of course, the fear here is the Albert Breer report from last offseason saying Juju Smith is 1 hit away from his knee exploding. That's the fear. Juju Smith Schuster has struggled with health, but as long as he stays healthy, he is a must start plug and play option in this Chiefs offense.
Dave, let's go to our round 3, where these are players that are going to be available in 80% of sleeper leagues. So this, we keep kind of opening up this to more and more rosters that need help, the deeper leagues, because we always get the comments that this guy's not available, and that's just going to be forever and ever and ever, no matter what week it is, what year it is. That's how fantasy football works. Everyone's league is harder than the next person's league. But here
Yeah,
we
and this
go.
yeah.
Yeah, no, go go.
Yeah, the first guy I'm going to talk about, it's funny, we look at the rostership on Sleeper, and it'll give you down to the 10th of a percent. And Sean Tucker is rostered in 0% of leagues,
Hmm.
not even 1 in 1,000 leagues. I mean, this guy isn't rostered anywhere. I will say, in a few super deep dynasty leagues, I do have some shares of Sean Tucker here and there. But man, he looked really good last week. As of now, he's the current RB1 on the week, which I don't think anybody had anticipated. He's a fun player. He was an undrafted guy, second year in the league out of Syracuse. And you probably heard me talk about Sean Tucker a little bit last year because Rashad White was terrible. And I kept saying, like, we need to get Sean Tucker some looks in this offense. And it never really happened. But he's a fun running back, really short, stout guy, hard runner. He's got elite breakaway speed and strength, 86 percentile speed score and 95th percentile strength score. I don't know what's going on with Rashad White or how much time he's going to miss. I don't know how much of a role Bucky Irving is going to maintain. A lot of Sean Tucker's touches did come in cleanup duty here in this game, but he looked good. And Rashad White has not looked very good. And Bucky Irving struggled last week as well. There's a lot of chaos right now happening in this Tampa Bay backfield, and there are worse speculative ads out there than Sean Tucker, a guy who is off the charts athleticism, really fun player to watch, and could potentially carve out a role in this very good Bucks offense.
Yeah, I'll say this: Bucky Irving looked a lot better this week than he did in the week prior. If I remember correctly, they played the Lions the week before, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah. So I mean, that's why. I mean, you're going up against the Lions, but the biggest thing that stands out to me here is not even the great Sean Tucker performance or Bucky Irving maintaining this role with 14 carries and 2 catches last week, but for me, it's that I think Rashad White is cooked. I think it's done. We're seeing that literally, quite literally, any other running back that they put back there is running better than Rashad White at this moment. And the whole thing about Rashad White was that he carried this value for being a receiver.
Mhm.
And what did you know? All these other running backs can also catch the ball out of the backfield. This is not me like dumping totally on Rashad White, but we're seeing that in the NFL, and it's always been like this. Running backs are very, very replaceable, but you become that much more replaceable when you're really not even playing that well. And there's two other guys that are running better than you, and this offense is winning games for the Bucks. I mean, let's not even there's no two ways about it. The Bucks look great, the offense looks great, and I think all three of these running backs are going to remain very heavily involved. All right, so my guy that I'm going to go with here, Demario Douglas, wide receiver for the New England Patriots. And I kind of ended up with this theme this week. This was totally unintentional, but I keep getting these wide receivers that are basically wide receiver threes for your fantasy roster. And spoiler alert, I did that again with my fourth pick in this waiver wire draft. But Demario Douglas, there's something kind of cool that's been going on with him in this New England Patriots offense. And I say this kind of hesitantly because I don't want it taken out of context, but I said in the preseason that there's a shot that the Patriots offense surprises us and kind of pulls a Houston Texans where Drake May looks really good and he'll lock in on a few wide receivers that could be getting a lot of targets. And that is sort of the vibe I'm getting with a Demario Douglas, where he's getting a little bit of that Tank Dell treatment, where he can move all over the field, play out of the slot, get a lot of these easy targets from his quarterback. And Drake May looked very good. Obviously, at the start, it wasn't great. And there were already people ready to just call him a bust after a quarter of football and talk about how he was just cheeks at that point. And then he goes and finishes this game with 3 touchdowns. And Drake May has the really underrated rushing ability. And I know I'm gushing right now over the quarterback and not the actual wide receiver, Demario Douglas, who I was talking about, but we've kind of seen that there's not really much success to be had in that Patriots offense without a good quarterback. And so now with Drake May in there, it gives us a lot more life, a lot more hope with this Patriots offense. Drake May was targeting Demario Douglas on a 27% target rate. The offense looked better. Like I said, the 3 touchdowns. Now next week, they go up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who honestly, like, they cannot stop anything. That team, the vibes are atrocious. By the way, if you guys have not seen, Jagger May here at Football Guys had a phenomenal tweet with Nandor from What We Do in the Shadows, reaching out telepathically to Doug Peterson. Have you seen that, Dave?
No, I did not.
You go immediately right now. Like, don't even pay attention to what I'm saying. Go look at it. And if you're watching or listening to this somewhere, go find at Jag Says on Twitter and just find that tweet from him, because it's just absolutely perfect. The Jaguars are awful. The vibes are awful. That tweet, hilarious. With Demario Douglas, next week could be a big boom week for him. And I think throughout the rest of the season, with Drake May and with this offense getting better, he probably stays in the wide receiver 3 to 4 territory rest of season. And there's actually finally some excitement about this Patriots offense. So that's where I'm at with Demario Douglas.
Jacoby Brissett was terrible so far this season, and I'm proud of the Patriots for finally making the right choice. I was looking on a per dropback basis. The only quarterbacks that had a worse EPA so far this year than Jacoby Brissett were Deshaun Watson and Will Levis, who have just been absolutely horrendous. And Demario Douglas is doing exactly what he did last year. He's getting open and he's drawing targets. Seen 9 targets in 3 of his last 4 games. And now if we could just get slightly better quarterback play, which I think we're going to, making the move from Jacoby Brissett to Drake May, that should make these targets a little bit more valuable. So I'm very excited about Demario Douglas. Drafted a lot of him this offseason, waiting for the day that Drake May would take over as a quarterback. And here we finally have it. So in complete agreement with you. Love the talent of Demario Douglas, and I'm hoping that Drake May can breathe some life into this offense.
Yeah, I'll take it a step further. Demario Douglas is probably going to be the name that you're going to see in a lot of waiver wire articles and podcasts, but I'll take it a step further based on how deep your league is. I'm really into Jalen Polk. I think he's a talented wide receiver. And I think that if there is something that kind of flourishes here at the end of the year, it could be this is if you have a deep bench and you can wait and hope for some returns there. I think Keyshawn Butte was another guy that had himself a good game here. Uh
Just dropped him in a dynasty league yesterday morning.
oof.
Would you believe it, Alfredo? Literally,
I would
this guy's sat around for a year and a half doing nothing on my roster, and then I drop him and he catches a big touchdown. Like, of course, he did.
yeah, yeah, you ask if I believe it. I do believe it.
Had to make
Absolutely.
had to make room to bring Kendra Miller up from the IR, and had to do that by dropping Kayshawn Booty. Just
When you
lose
have
all
the
around.
opportunity to drop one guy who hasn't done anything to activate another guy who hasn't done anything, you got to take it
Yeah,
every single time.
dynasty,
Every
how fun.
All right, let's go to round 4 here, where we're going to get to our picks that are available in at least 90% of sleeper leagues. Dave, kick us off with your final pick.
Isaac Guerendo is a guy that drew a ton of buzz at the combine. I don't think he was on anybody's radar going into that weekend, and then just blew everybody away with some phenomenal testing. And I mean, really, I'm not going to sit here and talk about Isaac Guerendo's scouting profile or anything like that. He is a running back on the 49ers. I'm pretty sure you could suit up Alfredo and rush for 60 yards and a touchdown in Kyle Shanahan's system. I mean, really, there have been like 2 guys in history. I tweeted about it yesterday that haven't found success in this offense. Trey Sermon and Tyrion Davis Price. Pretty much everybody else has. And we saw Jordan Mason go down. Guerendo came out and he actually looked terrible for his first 2 touches. And I saw those first 2 touches where he had some happy feet behind the line of scrimmage, didn't hit the hole too hard. And I said, all right, so Debo Samuel is going to be the RB1 going forward. But then they went back to Guerendo and he got better as the game progressed. We saw him cap it off with that big would-be touchdown run that he slid right at the goal line at the end of the game. To be honest, I'm not a huge believer in Isaac Guerendo's talent. And if he was on 31 different teams in the NFL, I wouldn't even be mentioning him, but we know that this offensive line and this blocking scheme works so well in San Francisco that if they have a one-cut runner that can hit that hole and turn it upfield, which is exactly what Isaac Guerendo can do, he can give you great production. So we don't know if Jordan Mason's going to miss any time. We don't know if he's going to miss the rest of the year. We have no idea what's going on with this Jordan Mason injury, but if he misses any time, it's not crazy to think that you can plug Guerendo into your lineup and get the same production from him that you've been getting from Jordan Mason through the first 5 weeks.
By the way, is it just me, or does Isaac Guerendo also have kind of a funny running style a la Isaiah Pacheco?
He does, yeah, he's got that, like, kicking the ground with every single step, yeah, it's very aggressive, but and again, like, this is a guy that, like I said, nobody, like, our guys who work on the, Football Guys rookie guide do a fantastic job. They had over 200 players in the pre-combine version. They didn't have Isaac Guerendo on there. This isn't a guy that, like, I heard anybody drawing buzz on. He was, like, one of the lowest guys that was even a part of the combine, but then he just blew it away with athletic testing. And Kyle Shanahan was like, yep, I want that on my team. And he got it. And chances are, if he gets an opportunity, he's going to be pretty good, as we have seen time and time again on Shanahan's 49ers.
Dave, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Pooping on the Football Guys rookie guide while also vouching for a waiver wire pick. We're just kidding. We love the rookie guide. It's awesome. You're just proving a point that no one really had seen Isaac Guerendo, and he wasn't even the top running back on his own team in
No one.
Louisville. It
Yeah,
was Jawar Jordan.
right.
So yeah, it's really just coming out of
And I,
nowhere. It's athletic testing.
and it's not just our rookie guide either. Like, I remember we had Heath Cummings on this show right after the combine to talk about the biggest winners and losers. And I remember Heath
Right.
kind of talking about Isaac Guerendo as a winner. And when Heath was done talking about him, I said, I got to be honest, I'm pretty plugged in. I know these incoming prospects. I had never heard this name before Saturday. And he said, yeah, me either. I mean, I'm I know football. I plug in. I pay attention to all the prospects. I didn't know who Isaac Guerendo was before the combine. Heath Cummings didn't know who he was. Our staffers didn't even have him in the rookie guide. I mean, this was genuinely a nobody, but good athletic testing, good landing spot, opportunity. Yeah, definitely pick him up and see what happens.
He's a somebody now. All right, let me go to my last pick here, and I kind of flip flopped on this one. And originally, I was looking at Kamani Vidal as a guy that it's another one of those like just grab the handcuff. There's potential that he could break out with J.K. Dobbins' injury history. You never know. Gus Edwards is on IR, but I decided to go a different direction with this and kind of stick with the theme that I had here, just picking up these wide receiver threes that have some good upside. And I went with DeVaughn Vele here, wide receiver out of Denver. And I know he's a 26-year-old rookie. I know this offense hasn't been very good, but don't look now. The Broncos actually have 3 wins on the season and they're competing and they're inconsistent, but they're not quite as bad as we thought. And Devon Vele has
I
now
don't want to
played,
cut you off, but isn't this like the same
but you will.
storyline as last year where we were like everybody was like, "Oh, the Broncos are terrible," but they just kept winning and they were like above 500 for the entire season. And we were talking about how the Broncos were the worst team in the league and Russ Wilson was the worst quarterback in the league, but they just kept squeaking out wins. Like it feels very
I've
familiar this year.
I've blocked out everything that happened last year. I'm so blocked out from it. I don't honestly, Sean Payton is just slightly more crappy Mike Tomlin, and I know that's going
Yeah,
to activate a lot of people
it's
in the
true.
comments. I'm just like, these are the guys that like they don't do anything all that groundbreaking, but they win enough games to keep their jobs. Like they're the millennial Jeff Fishers. Like that's what we're looking at right now. Sorry. I'm gonna get back to the waiver wire. My
Von
bad.
Vele, let's hear it.
DeVaughn Vele, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. He's played in 2 games this year. And in both those games, he's either led or tied for the team lead in targets. There is an obvious connection there with Bo Nix. It's a very small sample size, but out of those 2 games, he's a wide receiver 37 in fantasy points per game, just getting just under 12 PPR points per game. That doesn't sound like a lot, but let me tell you the names that he's ahead of in terms of points per game. He's ahead of Jackson Smith-Njigba, Michael Pittman Jr., Amari Cooper, Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens, and Calvin Ridley. Oh, and his teammate Cortland Sutton. And so now defenses, they really look at Cortland Sutton as the only guy that's a real weapon on that offense. And so they're focusing on him. The top corner is going on Cortland Sutton. And you got Devon Vele, who's this big body, kind of like really similar to Marcus Colston, who is like that's the kind of receiver that Sean Payton has really liked in his offense as much as he can get. And now with defenses focusing on Sutton, you kind of have Vele running around. Bo Nix is extending plays. He's running a lot. Bo Nix is running a ton, extending these plays. It doesn't always look good, but it leaves room and opportunity for these broken plays where Vele is open downfield. And that's where we're getting these big splashy plays. And right now, for the Broncos wide receivers for the rest of the season, they have a top 10 strength of schedule for fantasy wide receivers. So there's actually some light at the end of the tunnel here. And even if he's just a fantasy wide receiver 4, right? He's just in the top 48. That's a player that needs to be on fantasy rosters. I don't think that a player that is out there scoring like this consistently and getting targeted like this, even on a bad offense, should be out on the waiver wire.
Yeah, I agree. He's looked good in his 2 games so far, averaging 7 targets per game over those 2 games. Um, I'm a little bit concerned just about the age and like the lack of production we've seen up until this part of his career. 27 years old, finally carving out a role in the NFL is the major red flag here. But I think everybody knows that, and that's why he's still available in all these leagues. Absolutely worth it. Definitely not plugging him into my week 7 lineups. I want to see it a little bit more, but we've seen 2 games now where he has drawn a lot of targets and has a weird connection with Bo Nix. So yeah, it's worth it to pick him up and stash him and kind of see what happens here. I don't think that he's going to be able to usurp the wide receiver 1 role from Cortland Sutton, but Bo Nix seems to be looking better on a week in and week out basis. And even if Devon Vele is the wide receiver 2 here, that could be enough to work into your flex spot.
Yeah, and you mentioned the age thing. I don't really care about the age thing too much. I understand there is a concern that should be there. At this point, we're into the season where you just got to start taking swings on waiver wires.
Yeah.
And the age thing, maybe it would worry me in Dynasty because I have limited returns on that and a bad offense. And by the time the offense gets better, but right now, week to week, if I just need a guy that I can plug in and be like, please, God, just get me 8 points, DeVaughn Vele can likely do that.
Yeah.
This is,
Do you even know how he got drafted at 27 years old? I'm trying to figure that out. It's
I
kind of
know
bizarre. Like
absolutely
he
nothing.
played I've seen that he played 5 years in college, but 27 years old is pretty crazy. That means he was playing his freshman year at age 21. That's just no, play yeah, something there isn't adding up. That's I don't know. I'm gonna have to
I'm
do
sure there's a
some
great
digging.
story.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some digging once we get off this show because it's pretty odd,
FX will make a documentary about him. Have you seen that, by the way? The Aaron Hernandez,
dude.
not documentary, but the Aaron Hernandez like show that they're doing.
Is
For
there an Emmy award for like best impersonation? Because
the
the
Gronk.
entire category should just be like the Gronk guy, the Kraft guy, and the Belichick guy because they
Yes, it's so
nailed the
good.
mannerisms. Like, did you see the scene where they were talking about drafting Aaron Hernandez? Just the way the
Yes.
guy's like slumped back in his chair, like cut off sweater, arms closed, just like I don't care, you can play. Like just nailed every
So
Belichick mannerism.
good. He's just like, "F it, no one else in the league is doing it." This
Also,
is
speaking of Belichick mannerisms, why was Gerard Mayo wearing a cutoff hoodie yesterday with the sleeves cut off? Like,
mm,
come on, man,
mm.
come on.
I mean, Belichick didn't invent cutoff sleeves, I'll say that.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. It's a little weird taking over as the coach of the Patriots and
A
rocking
little weird.
a little weird, little weird. I didn't like it when they cut to him on the sidelines every single time. It's just a little ugh.
Bit weird. Alright, so let's get to our final part of the show here. These are the other players to consider. These are the players that we either left off this list for whatever reason or they just didn't quite make the cut. So, other players to consider here: Drake May, quarterback for the Patriots; Kamani Vidal, running back for the Chargers; Trey Benson, running back for the Cardinals; Deontay Foreman, with the Jerome
Mm,
Ford injury; Nick Chubb coming back. Like things could be just kind of weird in the backfield there for Cleveland. Rashad Bateman, who we talked about last week. Hey, the legacy continues. Rashad Bateman, it's looking good right now for fantasy football.
yeah.
Jordan Whittington is another guy who we know that Cooper Cup is coming back, but Whittington still remains available in a lot of leagues. Gabe Davis had a good flashy week here, even though the Jaguars don't look too great. And then I'm so excited to say this name, Bub Means. I hate that I have to say it because Chris Olave got a concussion, but Bub Means 8 targets last week, and like he actually looked good when red zone would flip over to the Saints games, and I'm seeing him bring down contested catches.
I mean,
There's
we
a
see that all the time though. Like Spencer Rattler was a second team quarterback all throughout camp. Bub
yeah,
Means was a second team wide receiver. Guess what? They built a connection over the last 4 months. So I don't think it's
shock.
crazy. You know, it was funny when I saw Bub Means kind of balling out yesterday. I was like, I know we talked about Bub Means once on this show in the offseason, and I had to go back and really think hard about it. And the only time Bub Means ever got any recognition on this show was when we were talking about incoming rookie wide receivers who had a better contested rate or contested catch rate than Keon Coleman. Bub Means was one of those guys. You know, that's kind of what he specialized in college was making contested catches. We saw it yesterday as well. So I don't hate it as a dart throw for getting a couple, couple few more weeks of Spencer Rattler here.
Yeah, I mean, at least you can get maybe 2 weeks of decent fantasy production if you've got Spencer Rattler. Maybe no Chris Olave next week. Plus, it's just fun to say Bub Means. We already mentioned Keishon Butte as one of the other players. And then the last one on here, Grant Calcaterra. Dallas Goddard looks like he suffered an injury. Calcaterra came in and he played nearly all the snaps for the offense. I believe it was over 90% of the snaps in
Mhm.
the rest of the game. And
More
Calcaterra, I mean, he
targets.
looked decent. He looked decent, but you and I were saying before the show, like, how much do you really want a tight end that's likely the fourth target on a
Mhm.
like not overly pass heavy offense? So I'm a little weary there, but tight end sucks. So I
Yeah.
get it if you want to go spend a couple bucks on Grant Calcaterra.
I think Kamani Vidal is definitely the guy that jumps out to me on this list. And
Yeah.
much like Guerendo, not a guy I am super sold on the talent and had his first touch of the game not been a huge touchdown that he scored on a wheel route, we probably wouldn't be talking about Kamani Vidal because he really didn't look too good outside of that one play, but he did have that one play. And if you're able to score a big touchdown, more opportunities are probably coming your way. So he's worth a little bit of a stash, but Jordan Whittington and Rashad Bateman are the guys that I'm probably most intrigued in here. Bateman, we talked about it, growing target share, growing role, finally healthy. Was kept out of the end zone last week, but still had over 70 yards on 4 targets. He looks like he is becoming a not a focal point, but a bigger part of that offense. But the other guy is Jordan Whittington, a guy who I've really been talking about a lot this offseason and this season. We heard about a week ago that the plan was for Cooper Kupp to come back after the bye in week 7. So we'll have to wait this week to kind of see if Cooper Kupp is practicing in full, and if he is active this week. I don't think there's any room to start Whittington, but definitely worth a pickup now when waivers run on Tuesday night, because we're not going to get information about Cooper Kupp's practice availability until Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So Cooper Kupp could easily miss another game. This could just be Sean McVay being a little bit optimistic about his outlook. And if that does happen, you're looking at Whittington not only as a good pickup, but a guy that you can absolutely put into your week 7 lineup. So Whittington is definitely way up on the list. Just know that if you do pick him up, there's a good chance that you're cutting him by Friday if Cooper Kupp is healthy.
I love all the guys that you mentioned there. I'll throw out Trey Benson, who he hasn't quite looked good, but it's another one of those handcuff type guys that if James Conner were to miss time, I'm okay having him on my roster, and he's a guy you can plug in as a flex play. I don't normally advocate for this, but I'm very intrigued by Drake May. I think that, and this is something I've talked about since the pre-draft process, is that his rushing ability is so
Yeah.
much better than a lot of people expected. And already in his first start, Drake May, top 10 quarterback in fantasy, goes out here in his first start against a tough defense, scores more fantasy points than Jaden Daniels, more fantasy points than Joe Burrow, more fantasy points than CJ Stroud, a bunch of guys who, were being very highly drafted by, fantasy analysts and fantasy managers everywhere. I'm not saying Drake May is going to be a must grab guy off the waiver wire or he must start, but I can absolutely see where if you're struggling at quarterback and you need that weekly streamer,
Yeah.
you can just grab Drake May and you've already got a decent floor with a guy who can run, who can probably get you some goal line touchdowns if the Patriots get close enough for that. And I think we saw enough in just this one week that I'm pretty excited about his potential going forward.
Yeah, the allure of the unknown with Drake May definitely makes him enticing and worth picking up. And the one last name I'll squeeze in here, and I don't think he made your list,
Squeeze it.
Alfredo, but Damian Pierce looks like the RB2 now. Dare Ogunbowale was in the game, to relieve Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's the clear workhorse. I mean, he went back to his old role, but we saw almost no Cam Akers. Dare Ogunbowale was just kind of coming in for um, pass blocking here and there. But Damian Pierce was back for the first time this year. We saw him rip off that big touchdown at the end of the game. No standalone value as long as Joe Mixon is healthy. But
Right.
Damian Pierce is definitely, I think, we saw how bad Cam Akers was when he got the opportunity. Dario Gumbawale is pretty limited in what he can do. I think Damian Pierce probably has the RB2 role locked down. So he's at least worth a stash, especially for mixing managers.
Well, there you have it. That'll do it for us. We went through all of our week 7 waiver wire targets, and we're going to be back again tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week, as we always are. Dave, here we go, man. We're halfway through the fantasy regular season. And for all of you that need a win here on Monday Night Football, I hope that everything goes your way. As always, for myself, for Dave Kluge, we want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.